How's it going, Rogues Gallery, and welcome! Today I am incredibly stoked to share with y'all what might actually be the most polished and highest quality indie TCG that I have ever covered here on Red Zone Rogue, Neuroscape. Neuroscape is a cyberpunk-themed trading card game that just oozes that level of quality that I mentioned before. They have a companion app already with just how to play in the app, as well as life tracker functionality, which is really important for this game because it has a different take on life systems. It's kind of got like this dual life pool system, one that represents like your cyber self and the other one represents like your physical self. It's pretty cool. We'll talk about that when we start going over the mechanics and taking a look at the cards. It also has beautiful, completely original artwork, no AI artwork here. In fact, they sourced their artists from some very reputable sources, everything from Warhammer 40,000 to Magic the Gathering to Cyberpunk 2077 to Diablo 4. They have a pretty large suite of artists, and I mean, honestly, when they sent me the product, and we'll check out the product, very shortly, I was very impressed on multiple levels. The cardstock is really, really good. The gameplay itself is really, really fun and engaging. It will be very familiar to people who know a lot of trading card games. There's going to be a lot of mechanics that you recognize, but they do some interesting things to tweak it to make it, feel more cyberpunky and to make it, stand out from everything else. I think it's actually just a very cool game in general, and one that I'm really excited to feature and share with you all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into a top-down and dive into Neuroscape. All right, let's do this. So, as you can see here, this is some of the stuff that they actually sent me to check out. I know they sent this to some other content creators as well, but yeah, we're going to go over all of this. We're going to talk about how the game plays, some of the mechanics that I think make it unique and stand out from some other trading card games out there, and my overall opinions just on the game. This is also a little card that they sent out that has a little bit about the game and about who they are. They have been making the game for 3 years, pouring their heart and souls into making their dream cyberpunk TCG. And I think that's kind of a key thing to note here, is that this is a cyberpunk TCG, not the, name brand of cyberpunk by Mike Pondsmith and Telsorian Games. No, cyberpunk as in like the genre of cyberpunk. Think Blade Runner, even Cyberpunk Red, all that kind of good stuff. But this just kind of doesn't exist in the TCG industry. There used to be an old cyberpunk TCG that didn't look very good at all. This one blows it out of the water in almost every way. We'll talk about that when we talk about the cards and mechanics and all that kind of stuff. But hey, I think this is a pretty unique thing, and there's not a ton of just sci-fi games on the TCG market in general, so I think that's really, really cool. And they are just a two-person independent studio, but as I mentioned at the start, they do have like a large suite of artists, which I think is very, very cool, and I do like how much focus they put on the artists. And from the top to bottom, like I mentioned, this game is just coming out of the gates with so much quality. And so let's talk about a little bit of that quality and kind of show some off here in person. And it's not just like the nature of the products, but it is that. A lot of the games that I cover that are indie TCGs have a lot of like test print stuff, and that's really understandable. But man, these guys are coming out of the gates with some really nice stuff. Definitely putting their best foot forward. So here's a little box that they sent me, and inside there is a little how to play QR code. They do have a complete how to play video already, which is fantastic. And we'll talk about the app in a second too, because the app is very robust right off the gates. Here's a nice little sticker. I'll put that on a card box or something at some point. Here's a bunch of punch outs to keep track of various things, pluses and minuses, and attack and defense, all this kind of good stuff. This also comes with some paper playmats that are the paper versions of the actual neoprene playmats that they sent me. There are 2 of them. I'll kind of show this off in a little bit as well as these like actual like banger dice, dude. Like, as someone who deals with a lot of dice, I play a lot of TTRPGs, like tabletop RPGs, as well as card game stuff. Dude, these die, these are really, really nice. They're hollow. You can kind of see You can kind of see through it. So like I said, and they're metal too. This is not like a cheap plastic. This is actual metal. So very, very nice, high quality stuff, like right off the gate. Very, very impressed. Obviously, this is where the cards would be, but I've been playing with the cards. I've been actually like play testing and playing with the cards. So the cards are actually in here, all sleeved up. Let's go ahead and move some of this stuff aside. So yeah, right off the gate, really nice quality stuff. Just, you know, putting their best foot forward. Very impressed just right off the get-go here. Here are the playmats. So there's this playmat, and then there's also this playmat featuring two of the key iconic characters, which I think are the your unique characters or legendary characters if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering. And my camera doesn't get everything in focus, but you know it's fully labeled. You have your Cyber deck, which is like your main deck, your Recycle Bin, which is like your graveyard, and Purge, which is like Exile. We're going to use Magic the Gathering terms because I know a lot of people are more familiar with Magic than anything else. I could use Shadowverse terms if you'd like, but I think more people will be familiar with Magic. And then here you have your mainframe, your Ram deck. So this is your resource deck. Your mainframe is a card that starts in play and has various abilities. So this is kind of like, you can think of it as like your leader or something, but it's not quite the same. You just start with a mainframe. And then you also have your Ram deck, which is like your resource deck, right? So if you play, you know, a lot of people on this channel are familiar with Gundam. That'll be like your resource deck from Gundam or from like One Piece or, you know, Force of Will, whatever. You have a resource deck that's separate from your main deck, which I always really, really appreciate in modern TCG design. And then also you have this space up here that's labeled Environment, which is a special type of card that can only have one on the field. So you actually share this space with your opponent. So playing an Environment card is really impactful for both players. So you want to have a good Environment card on your field that kind of like synergizes with everything. So let's go ahead and open this up and we'll pull out the two decks that they sent me. Like I said, these are all sleeved up and I have been play testing a little bit here. And the game, I think, is very fun. If you are familiar with a lot of other trading card games, especially the ones that I've already mentioned in this video, you'll be very familiar with some of the mechanics in Neuroscape. So for example, I mentioned your mainframe. So this is a mainframe, right, of the hacker archetype or clan or whatever you want to call it. The faction, I guess you can say. There's a bunch of different factions in the game, and hacker is one of them. There's basically two here, or one for each of the decks that they gave me. There's the hackers, and then these ones are the cybernetics. But you can kind of mix and match. Usually you want to only play like one or two in your deck, but you can have as many of different types as you want. You have a lot of cards that synergize with it, which is why you'd only want to have one or two. But anyway, so this is a mainframe. This is Firestarter. It has an additional bonus if you have two hacker cards on your field, and it says whenever you play a Trojan, which is a type of card, or a hacker program, deal 1 damage to any target. So this incentivizes you to play Trojans and hacker cards, right? Hacker programs specifically. And then also it has a second effect. When you have 4 hackers, you deal an additional 2 damage to the target. So it actually stacks on top of that. So if you have 4 hackers on the field, it'll deal 3 damage to a target. And this is, it says right here, this is your mainframe. It's a hacker mainframe. And this little symbol on the bottom says that it's hacker. But they also say it here too, so you don't necessarily have to remember that. And this is a card that starts in play. So you start in play with your mainframe, and then you also have your actual main deck. Got these sleeved up in my favorite, Dragon Shields. This is a Hex Codemancer, so it's the same art as this. You can see some of how the foiling is done. It's kind of like this rainbow metallic foil. And then it also has these little pips here. We'll talk about these in a second, which is one of the more interesting mechanics in the game, I think. And this is a iconic hacker, which is like a legendary character, right? The cost up here, that 5 is the cost that's required to play him. But there's a little bit of an interesting thing with that we'll talk about when we talk about the resources, because in a lot of card games, you know, you have your resources here, right? This is just your basic RAM. And so like you have your RAM bank, right? Like, you know, like your lands or whatever for whatever card game that you play, resources, and then you can run them, you know, use them to pay for effects. So this is 5 here to pay for Hex. However, if you're playing a character, these actually now go under him. So you have this kind of like give and take in with playing your characters, or holding back playing characters, making sure you have enough basic RAM to play other effects. Because if you play other effects, like just anything else that's not a character, so like this Deja Vu program, right? It's cost 7. It's a really powerful card. It lets you take an extra turn. But if you play this, it doesn't go under, like your RAM doesn't go under. So it's kind of like this give and take of, you know, knowing when to play your characters and knowing when to kind of hold back, and this thing of like, you know, not playing too many characters early on and then running out of RAM. We'll talk about how you get RAM in just a moment, but it's just one of those things that I think is very, very interesting. Looking at the character card, other things, this is one of the run abilities. So run basically means you turn the card sideways, you activate it. Run ability, it's called Backdoor. It says you play a Trojan for 0 cost. So he just helps you play other Trojans, synergizes with our mainframe. This one has a cost of 3, and it's a DDoS attack, of course. He's a hacker. You just pay the 3, and then you run him. You don't have to put the 3 under him, I don't think, when you're playing effect, only when you're playing him like as a card. For this effect, you just pay the cost. And it says deal 2x hacker damage to target opponents, blue life total. So now we're going to get into a couple interesting things. Your opponent has a blue life total and a red life total, and we'll showcase those. We'll pull up the app in just a second just to show that. But this character in particular has 3 blue damage and just 3 health, right? Any damage dealt to an ally or into a character, you know, counts as either. But when you deal the damage to your opponent, like directly, it will go into that respective life pool. They have a blue life pool and a red life pool. This deal 2x hacker damage, that just means like equal to the number of hacker cards you have on the field, right? So this is just a really powerful effect that just deals a bunch of damage to your opponent, equal to 2 times the number of hackers you have on the field. Also, looking at the rest of the card, there are these little pips here. So you see a 3 pip on the top, you see a 2 pip on both sides, and a 1 pip on the bottom. These actually represent the types and power levels of cyberware you can equip on this character. So yes, you can Borg out your dudes, you can equip cyberware, and it is based on, well, that number. So let's go ahead and we'll find some cyberware here. That's, you know what? Let's use the other deck, for example. So the other deck is just full of cyberware. That's kind of like what the cybernetics are all about. So here, similar type card. Here is an iconic cybernetic. She's very powerful. 6 physical attack, 5 health, and she has a bunch of abilities. This is Arc, Circuit Breaker, 5 costs, and then she has really, really high levels of cybernetics. So 3 across the board here. So we'll use her as an example, and then we can grab here. Now, it was easier to find it for this deck. So here's a Flux Cannon, right? So a Flux Cannon is a cyberware arm, and you can equip this to any character that has a 1 slot on the arms. And so you literally link it up like this. Now, to link it up, this means they need to have a 1 on there. 1 or better, I should say. So if this was a 3, she could link it up here. But if the character, so say let's grab a more complicated piece. Let's grab. There's some really cool cards in this deck. I like this deck quite a bit. Yeah, here we have Nux. So we'll grab Nux, and then we'll grab like a puny. We'll grab this Virtual Kid. So here's just a really basic card, right? Virtual Kid, 1 drop, 1/1, has 2 cyberware slots on the top, 1 on each side, like each side for each arm, and then 1 for the feet. So this card, Nux, is another cyberware. This is arm. It has 2 pips here, so you need to have at least 2 or higher to equip. So this Virtual Kid would not be able to equip because they only have one pip. There we go. That's the example. However, Arc could, because she's got 3. She's got 3 pips. And you could, like I said, you could like just absolutely Borg out your dude, and then just have like, you know, they've got Nux here, they've got the Flux Cannon, and then you also have like head pieces which would go on the top, and then the leg pieces which would go on the bottom. And I think that's just kind of like, here's a Riot Blade. I think it's just one of the kind of the cool parts of this, and definitely like a very flavorful thing. If you are, ooh, here's a good one, the drive saw. If you are into like cyberpunk stuff, you know that just kind of like, you know, decking your character out, like suiting them up with cybernetics, is just like a really big part of like the flavor of just cyberpunk stuff in general. Here's a program as a drug. Cybernetics also, you know, they have their benefits, but they also have their downsides. So for Nux, this one gives your character +7 attack. However, they also get Psychosis 10, which says if this character attacks, blocks, or activates any ability, you roll a d20. If you roll lower than the total Psychosis, it deals its attack damage to you and the action fails. So like you can pump up arc by quite a bit, but hey, sometimes it's gonna punch you back. Like they have cyber psychosis, which is really cool. And then it also has its own abilities here, like Pummel, which is a dual target character. There's this dual target character, so both characters deal damage to each other, and you can pay 3. So it's just a great way to like pick off stuff, or just attack for an absurd amount of damage. Now I've mentioned the damage a couple times already. Let's go ahead and finally bust out the app here. You can download the app right now. It is, let's see, Neuroscape. So here's the app. They do have their Kickstarter, but they have the life counter, which is all ready to go. So like I said, you have, you know, you can't really see the colors really well on the phone. Here, let's tone down it just a bit. There we go. Now you can see the colors a lot better. So you have your mainframe and then your bioframe. So like I said, you have your blue life total and your red life total. The mainframe and bioframe take damage separately. So we have this character Arc here, and you can see on the bottom, she does red damage. So that is bioframe damage. We had Hex here. Hex was doing mainframe damage. And as I mentioned, these damages are, you know, not mutually exclusive. So you can have, you know, you can be at like 4 here, but if you take lethal damage on this, then you die. So if either of these reaches 0, then you die. And what's interesting about that is that you kind of don't want to split your damage types, which makes a lot of sense, right? So for this particular deck, you have a lot of, or all the cards, in fact, deal bioframe damage. They all deal red damage. Look at this card, by the way. Freya, Rogue, Valkyrie. Of course, I like the character that has Rogue in the name. This deck has some really cool. This deck has some really cool stuff in it. There's some other like Metalhead looks pretty awesome, but I also like the Iron Maiden because, like, I mean, obviously the metal reference, but also she just looks awesome. And she can equip some pretty powerful stuff here. We have Megaroids, Kiwi Crush, Delete, destroy target character. So this is kind of like one of your basic removal spells. Costs 4. Program Script, delete target character or destroy target character. Freya, Rogue, Valkyrie again. So like very cool stuff. And so let's kind of go over some of the other like core mechanics of the game, just to kind of give you an idea of how things work, right? So you start the game. Let's kind of move some of these other stuff off the side. I also themed these sleeves with the deck. So it also comes, or at least what they sent me, came with this nice little on your turn play order thing, which is really helpful. I love it when card games do this, as well as like what the icons mean, you know, and all that kind of good stuff, as well as card anatomy, which we already went over. They do have a little QR code for the Kickstarter, and then player turn, and then Trojan in play. Trojans are kind of like traps. They're secrets. You play them face down, your opponent doesn't know what they are, and then you can trigger them whenever it says that you can trigger them. So essentially, when you have the game going, so you have the cyber deck. Mulligans are pretty simple in this game. I do believe it is just a full bot and then redraw kind of mulligan system. But for the RAM deck and getting your resources and drawing per turn, it's really interesting. So back here on the Neuroscape app, you actually have not only just a life counter, but you also have a rule book, as well as like a how to play guide, and just everything, which is, like I said, just goes into this being one of the most polished like indie TCGs that I've ever covered. Right off the bat, they just have everything ready. So they have the rule book, You can have the learn to play. They have a tutorial video, but they also just have like a quick start, which is like, hey, what do you need to know? Game setup. How many cards do we start with? So this actually made me laugh. This is deck construction rules. So you have your mainframe card. So we got a mainframe. Check. You have your deck. It says 50 to 255 cards, which just made me laugh. They put a cap at 255. Hey, if you want to have your 255 card deck, you can. And then your RAM deck with 25 basic cards. I apologize, I said 20. It's 25. Now, you also have your life counter and your die. This app has dice built in, which is great. Kind of give you an overview of how everything goes. So your starting hand is 5 cards, and then you can put any number of cards from hand on the bottom of your deck and then draw the same number. So yeah, it's bot deck, and then you draw the same number. So this one is pretty interesting. The mulligan system in this is pretty interesting. It's very much like Shadowverse Evolve, except for Shadowverse Evolve, it's your entire hand, and then you have to draw up. But the thing is you don't shuffle, which means you have to be careful about the cards that you put on the bottom, because it's very likely that you might not see them again unless you have other shuffle effects or search effects, which I think is also just generally interesting and fascinating. So yeah. So that's how the basic rules go. So let's just say we have 5 cards here. Sure. Yeah. We can work with this. We'll just say we just keep this hand, right? Mostly because I have 2 character cards that cost pretty low. So this is a 2-drop. This is a Phantom OS. They have an effect where you can pay 2. Ghost in the Machine. Search your cyber deck for a virus or Trojan. Reveal it. Put it in your hand and shuffle, which is really, really nice for this deck in particular, right? So this is a type AI and Hacker. So it's got 2 types down here, but it is a Hacker type card. So we have our mainframe as I bump the camera a little bit. And so now the resources is really interesting. So at the start of your turn, when you are drawing a card, you can either choose to draw 1 card, 2 cards, or get a RAM, 2 RAM, or rather I should say it this way. You can choose to draw a card and get a RAM. You can choose to get 2 RAM, or you can choose to draw 2 cards. So you basically have 2, activations, 2 uses. Every time you're at the start of your turn, you can either ramp yourself twice, draw 2 cards, or a combination of the 2. Get a RAM, get a card draw. So on the first turn, I found it pretty nice to get just 2 RAM. So you can kind of like start off, kind of have an explosive turn here. So we get 2 RAM, and we can play something like our Tagger, or we can play something like the Phantom OS. And you're like, hey, maybe I want to go like big, tutor kind of deal here. So I'm going to play my Phantom OS with my RAM, and then the RAM actually goes under the character, as I mentioned before. Which means that you have to be really careful with that. But the next turn we play, right, we can do the 2 RAM again, and then we can actually activate her ability to go search our deck for a virus or Trojan, or we can play, any other card that we have in our hand. Like we have a delete here. Can't play it because of the 4-drop, but we do have a power spike, which is a Trojan. Trojans say you attach it face down to an opponent's mainframe. And so the way you do that is you put it in your opponent's mainframe slots. You can see the mainframe slots over here. So we attach it to the opponent's mainframe. And it says if our opponent takes 3 mainframe damage for each of their attacking characters. So basically, if they're doing a big attack, you can activate your power spike, and then they take 3 damage for each attacking character, which is really, really good. The way that attacking and blocking works in this game, so let's just say we have both of these out. It's very similar to other card games you've played. You declare your attackers, and you send them in, and your opponent will declare their blockers. It's very close to games like Magic the Gathering, so if you're familiar with Magic, it's going to be very, very similar to that. I should mention that when a character is removed, and if they have this RAM installed, the RAM goes back into your RAM bank. So it's not like permanently lost or anything like that. You do get it back if your character is removed for whatever reason. All right, so before we call it quits here, let's just kind of go over some of the other kind of cool cards that they have here and just talk about some stuff just in general and some of the other card types that we haven't really talked about yet, like the environment cards and all that kind of good stuff. So we have Nova the White Rabbit, one of the other really nice cards that they sent me here. And she has pretty cool effects, like she can draw cards from your cyber deck, and you can also search your cyber deck for a Wonderland card or a Hacker card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your cyber deck. So there's a lot of ways to, like, you know, search up cards from your deck. You even have ways to, we already saw Hex here, but we even have ways to ramp ourselves. So here's a card called Admin. It's a character hacker, just a simple 1/1, but you pay 2 to do the effect called Index, and you set it and you activate him, or you run him, and it says install 1 RAM running. So basically this is a way to get additional RAM, like, permanently, right? So both decks have cards like this. So we have Admin for this deck, and let's see if I can easily and quickly find the other one. I think they're both 1-drop, so that should help it a little bit. Yeah, Scrapper here. So Scrapper, Scrap Heap, install 1 RAM running. So, you know, both of these decks and archetypes have ways to ramp, which is really nice. Other effects and cards, let's talk a little bit about the environment card. So this is a 3-drop environment card. It says whenever a player plays a program, they can draw a card from their cyber deck. So obviously really good for our deck because we are playing a lot of programs. So here's a program called Binary Blast. A program is essentially kind of like a spell card, like a one-shot kind of deal. So this is a 1-cost spell, Binary Blast, and it says refresh target character. If the character is a hacker, they get +1/+1 until end of turn, which is pretty nice. And so once again, the environment cards stick on the field and they count for both players. And if your opponent plays another environment card, then it removes the current environment card in play. What else? This one is an interesting one because I want to mention another mechanic that I haven't talked about yet. So this card, System Error, right? It costs 3 here, but it also has another cost in the top. It says required, you have to have a hacker. So this means you have to have a hacker on the field in order to play this card. So this is another kind of like requirement to make it so like it's much more restrictive in what decks can play this. And this one says attach an opponent's mainframe. During their net check, they take 2 of the mainframe damage, right? And so this is a program virus. Once again, you attach it to your opponent's mainframe, kind of like how you do a Trojan. Most of the Trojans will like go away after use. This one is a virus. This one sticks in play and has like a constant effect. What's another one? So here's another example. So this one is a Trojan. It's a 2-cost Fatal Error. Trojan, once again, you attach it face down to their opponent's mainframe, and you can flip up and destroy it to activate any swift. So it says you may flip and destroy to activate on any swift check after the turn it was played. A swift check is basically at like instant speed, the same as like Magic the Gathering. So if something has swift, you can play it when you have priority, like Magic the Gathering. So it has this cost at the top to play it face down, but you also have this cost to activate it to destroy all attacking characters, which is really good for a deck kind of like this. And then we kind of showed off the crab a little bit before, but I wanted to have a different example. So the crab is a malicious headpiece. You put this on your opponent's cyberware. So this says take control of target character opponent controls until end of turn, refresh it and its abilities. Its attack deals mainframe damage only until end of turn, and you destroy Cortex Crab and return the character's owner's control at end of turn. So this is a malicious cyberware that you put on your opponent's head and gain control of it for the turn. So you can have cyberware that's good for you, or cyberware that can like be negative for your opponent. Now, just a couple quick things before we talk about my final impressions or my first impressions on this, and that is just a couple small stuff. So damage is not permanent in this game. It kind of like heals up at the end of turn, very similar to Magic the Gathering. So it's not like Shadow vs. Evolve where you have persistent damage. Everything does get refreshed at the end of turn, so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like a, you know, more like a Magic the Gathering style thing. There is a moment in the game called Force Quit. So on your turn, when it's your phase, I don't remember exactly the order of the phase, but you do have a Force Quit phase. So it's during the beginning, so during the initialize step. After you draw cards or install RAM, you can Force Quit, which means just blow up your stuff. You can blow up anything you have, so if you need to get rid of it for whatever reason, you can do that. One of the reasons you might do that is if you have a bunch of RAM underneath characters that you aren't using anymore, or maybe, you know, you can better use that RAM. So you can force quit your characters and get that RAM back, because after you force quit a character that has RAM under it, like I mentioned before, all the RAM goes back into your RAM bank. This is also a game where all of your characters can attack, block, and activate abilities the same turn they're played. So yeah, you can just go to town. If you have enough resources to do it, you can do everything, right? So you can play Nova and then activate her lucidity ability the turn she's played if you have the whole 4 resources to do that. So keep that in mind. There is no summoning sickness or anything like that in this game. You can just jam and play stuff immediately, kind of like Grand Archive. There's another interesting mechanic where at the start of your turn, if you don't have the requisite number of RAM underneath any given character, then you go under something called a stability check. And so let me kind of run down what happens here. So basically what happens is your mainframe goes unstable, and you have to roll a d20 for every character and program you have in play. Just all the characters, not all the characters that you have less RAM on, just all of your characters. Basically, it's like they say it as like, oh, your whole computer is crashing. And so if you roll a 1 to 10, the character or program is immediately destroyed and placed in your recycle bin. If you roll an 11 to 20, that character or program survives. That's great. Any RAM committed to destroyed characters is sent back to your RAM bank running. So you do get the RAM bank. You do get the RAM back. So yeah, losing RAM on characters is kind of a big deal and can be pretty rough. And I think I've covered it pretty well here. If you have any other questions, like seriously, their app is really good. So you just go download the app and watch the tutorial video, the quick start. You can look at the cheat sheets, all that kind of stuff. It's just all here on the Neuroscape app. So definitely go check it out if you have any other questions or anything like that. And I guess now we're gonna get into my my final thoughts here, or at least some of my initial thoughts and impressions. And I kind of already said it at the start. I think this is the most polished indie TCG that I've covered right off the bat. It feels like a completely finished product. They have everything that you would expect a complete TCG to have. Everything from like accessories, like they have the play mats and stuff, but they have the app, they have the rule book, they have the how to play thing. All the cards look great, at least for the cards that they sent me. All of the art is done, and it looks fantastic. It looks like stuff that you'd expect from a AAA TCG. Like, look at this dude, Faceless Oni. This guy looks rad. This is why I put this in the Oni sleeves. There is clear archetypes between the 2 different decks. Look at this guy, little lug nut, best pupper, best cyber pupper there. Spectre 9mm. So yeah, I mean, like, just on the face level, the quality is really, really high. It does run into a similar problem that I see some other indie TCGs run into in that it's somewhat hard to differentiate between the cards and you're just kind of flipping through a deck, because everything essentially has kind of the same borders with just some color here to help differentiate. So that is kind of a negative here. There's not a lot of ways to tell between what a card is just from the border, right? Because here we have a character, and here we have a cybernetic head, and I mean, they kind of look very similar, right? So if I had to say any negative things or constructive feedback, that's one of them. But honestly, that's something that I see a lot in these kind of like indie TCGs. But I mean, other than that, I think it's just fantastic, just overall. Gameplay wise, I think it's really solid as well. Gameplay, as I mentioned before, is going to remind you very similarly of other trading card games out there on the market. Combat, the stack, all very similar to something like Magic the Gathering. I'm trying to find one of the fast speed cards. It's all very, very similar to Magic, or other TCGs that are out there. I do really like how you can draw 2 cards a turn if you decide to, or you can get 2 ramp, basically. You can get 2 RAM. I should note, I didn't mention this before, but on the first turn, you only get 1. So you can either choose to draw a card or to get a RAM. But after that, you get 2. Any game that you can draw 2 cards a turn is really, really... I think it's a really great mechanic. Drawing cards is fun. And so I just think that generally is fun. Or you can choose to ramp, which is cool. So if you want to ramp into, like, your faceless Oni, you can technically, you know, jam this out pretty quickly if you need to. Or you can do a more measured approach where you're both drawing, maybe playing lower cost stuff like Scrapper, and you know, going from there. So yeah, I think the game is really interesting. I think it's incredibly well polished. I think it's a game that is definitely worth checking out, especially if you're in to kind of like the cyberpunk aesthetic. And I think they did a great job with it too. Like they're all in on the aesthetic, and I think it kind of like really shines through. So here, let me pull out some of the shinier cards that they sent. Like just check this out, right? Just like great quality overall. Like, yeah, and that's kind of the name of it. I do also really love how each character, they have an effect, but they also have like a flavor ability. So like this is called Lucidity or Past Life. I just think small touches like that is really cool. It helps with like the world building and the flavor of the game, right? This is Backdoor. He does DDoS attacks. So yeah, I recommend checking it out for sure. They do have their Kickstarter. It might be the day that this video goes live, and I will have links in the description down below, or the Kickstarter might already be live by the time this video goes live. Either way, I will have links in the description down below to all the stuff. I'll have a link to their website as well. You can check out all the different artists and everything that they have there. But as mentioned, super polished. If you want to check out more, just download the app. Like, it's just on the Google Play Store already. You don't have to do anything weird to get to it. And it's just, yeah, like I keep saying it, but it really is one of those polished indie TCGs that I've ever covered. I'm really curious to see where this game goes. This is one of the ones that I do think could make kind of a splash in the TCG scene, especially when they're coming out of the gates with quality like this. So really curious to see where they go, and really, you know, wish them the best of luck on their Kickstarter. I think the game is definitely really cool and fits a niche that just doesn't exist right now in the TCG industry. So yeah, that's about all I have to say for Neuroscape. Very cool game, very high quality, and yeah, I wish them the best of luck. Very cool. Let me know what you all think about Neuroscape in the comment section down below, and yeah, I hope to see y'all next time. See you later, everyone.